The story of Robert de Villa. You know who that is? No, you don't, because I do. 3 months ago, I gave khutbah in Fort Worth. I haven't been to that masjid in 4 or 5 years, and they invited me for some reason, and I went. And I gave khutbah there. My khutbah was about dua. An Egyptian fellow comes up to me, a young man came up to me afterwards, he goes, Allah fulfilled my dua today. And I said, what's your dua? He said, my dua was that Nu'man Ali Khan should meet Robert de Villa. I was like, are you Robert de Villa? He goes, nope, I am not Robert de Villa. Robert de Villa is my friend. But I think Allah is fulfilling my dua. I was like, fire away, I want to know. Robert de Villa is a young man who lives in a town 40 minutes past Fort Worth. He was a farmer, young guy. And he was hit with some sort of genetic disorder that kicked in later on in his life, and he became paralyzed from the neck down. And he lives in a nursing home. Most people in that nursing home are 90 years, 100 years. They're really, really old people. And then there's, his room where he's paralyzed neck down. He's the only 30-something-year-old that is in the nursing home, okay? And he's been in that nursing home for the last 10 years. His family got a computer for him that's voice activated, so he can give voice commands, put a headphone on and Google stuff and search stuff so he can surf the web and find information. And his best friend was in the bed next to him, and his friend died at the operating table. Now his friend, who's also a Christian, the deceased friend, his sister, took one of the amulets of his friend, a crucifix, and she gave it as a gift to Robert. This is a reminder of your old buddy. So he hung it on the side of his hospital bed. Robert de Villa lives a pretty decent life in there. The nurses take care of him. He's a happy guy. And one day he goes to sleep and he sees a man in his dream.
Actually, like in the dream, what it was I was kind of standing there. It was odd because most of my dreams I have now, since I'm paralyzed, in my dreams my legs hurt. They feel like tree trunks and I can't move, and I'm in pain because I guess I'm dreaming because I'm in pain. But this time I was just standing there, and then a little around the way from me, I'd say about 20 feet or so away to my left, I was in a desertous area. There were like sand dunes a little, and to my left there was a group of men gathered around a person who was standing up talking to them, and it was by firelight because it was almost nighttime. Wasn't quite dark, but it was dark enough for a fire, and they had it going, and you could tell these men were listening to him intently, so I was like, okay, this man's very important. And then also to my right was the crucifix setting up that I had in my room, but it was like life size, and I was sitting there and I'm like, okay, what's going on, And then suddenly the man, he was standing there and he was giving hand gestures. You could tell he was talking and saying something very important. And when he had turned to me and he looked at me and he says, look, he pointed to the crucifix and he said, look, this was a man, a prophet, he'd eat food, drink water, go to the bathroom just like every other man. He's not a god, only a prophet, just, follow God, not men. And then I woke up, and then it wasn't so long after I woke up and gathered myself. Because right when he turned to me and talked to me and told me that, I knew right then and there it was the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then, I woke up, and then, like I said, I had to gather myself to figure what just happened, and that was real. Because at this time, I had been studying about Islam and everything, and I even learned the Shahada and other things, but I hadn't taken it yet. But then that time, I woke up and I just, right there by myself, I did it, I took Shahada in, it was September of 2011.
When he takes Shahada, he wants to learn about the Quran. So he goes on these chat sessions and finds somebody needs to teach me Quran. He finds a brother in Egypt that he gets together with on Skype to try to learn Arabic. Learn the Arabic alphabet. Once he learned the Arabic alphabet, he learned to recite the Quran. So he starts Googling how to understand the Quran. And for some reason, he ends up on my videos. And he starts watching my stuff. In the nursing home, there was an Egyptian fellow that used to come in and do some repair work. The Egyptian fellow has his own awesome story. The guy had basically lost faith. He wasn't religious. The nearest masjid to him was 50 miles away. So he didn't really go to Jum'ah much anymore. But he felt a spiritual void, so he started going to the church just to feel closer to Allah. Raised Muslim. He goes to the church just to feel closer to Allah. He's passing by Robert's room one day and he hears وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. So he walks into his room and says, Robert, what are you listening to? Robert says, nothing. That was me. And the guy says, you're Muslim? He goes, yeah, I became Muslim. And now this friend is in shock. How does Allah guide someone in the middle of Churchtown, USA, in a nursing home, with a crucifix on the side of his bed that he doesn't even have the physical strength to move, and the guy himself says, I want to come back to Allah. So he tells him about his, the friend he found online, Nouman Ali Khan. So the Egyptian fellow starts watching my videos. And then he says, I wish I could meet him one day. And he says, okay, I'll pray for you. And after 5 years, that Egyptian friend shows up at the same masjid that I haven't been to in 4 years. And after Jum'ah says, I think Allah wants to fulfill my friend's dua and my dua. So I said, I think He does. Let's go. So I took a few of us and we went. And we met with Robert. We had a beautiful conversation with him. And inshallah, for Eid, we're going to go to his nursing home again. The nursing home was pretty shocked. You're all here to meet Robert? Like, yep. Why do you want to meet him? He's an inspiration. Like, okay, let me check if we can. And they had to call the hospice administrator and all this stuff, and then eventually let us in. And Robert's in shock. And then I meet with Robert, we're talking, and I was like, hey Robert, so I heard you memorize some surahs. He says, yeah. Can you recite one for me?
I don't know. Alright. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف.
I want to tell you some more about Robert because young guys are here. Young guys that play basketball. Young guys that are healthy. Young guys that have ambition. I told you what's his paralysis, from where to where? Neck down. He has a special wheelchair that has to hold pretty much every part of his body in place. He can't just sit in a wheelchair. It holds his neck and it holds every other part of his body in place because he has no control over his limbs. And he has to have a special van where the wheelchair locks in so that if it goes through a bump or whatever, he doesn't, receive the shock. So he made a request. He wants to go to the Friday prayer. They didn't have the special van, so they put him in a regular van. And so he went to the regular van and a few bumps and his spine got even more hurt. He went to Jumu'ah. He came back in excruciating pain and they said, I'm sorry Robert, you're no longer able to sit in your wheelchair. You're going to have to stay in your bed for the next 6 months at least. If you see recovery, then you can get back up again. I met him in that span. He had already been in that bed for 3 months already. And the reason he was in that bed is he went to the Jumu'ah prayer. And he told me about the Jumu'ah prayer. He said, I've never felt more peace in my life than I was in that masjid. And you know what I'm going to do, Brother Nouman? When I can sit in my chair again, I'm going to go to Jumu'ah. I'm going to go to the masjid because I've never felt like that before. There's someone who has nothing but control over his mouth and his eyes. And he says, I only find peace in the masjid. If Allah can guide Robert Davila, Allah guide everybody. And then he said, sometimes I wonder why Allah put me in this position. And then I say to myself, what, am I kidding? Allah has given me so much. I am so grateful for what He gave me. And if this is the way He was going to bring me to Islam, it's all worth it. So worth it. You have Muslims that lose a little bit of health and they say, why is Allah doing this to me? This is really the gist of what I wanted to share with you. I don't want to speak longer. I've spoken too long already. I love So it's a reminder for all of us that, no, there are no excuses. Robert can learn Quran. From where he is, no Muslims around him, just dedication. And
That's
then Allah
true.
opens the door,
Yeah, I like to say, if you have problems, just, I've never studied Arabic or anything like that in my life. I understand that there are some people, Muslims, who grew up maybe in a Muslim home, they don't even know Arabic. I mean, it's not hard to learn Quran. Get on there and just try, and don't give up. It's not hard. I mean, it starts off, you think, oh, this is the hardest thing in the world for me to do. I can't do this, but no, it's not. Just sit there and listen, go along with the recitation, and then, eventually, what I did was I went and I learned the Arabic alphabet, and now, I can find out how to pronounce the words correctly. So when I'm reciting, most of the time I say it correctly. I know my accent's not very good, but I say it anyways. And it took me a while to learn the last 10 surahs of the Quran, and still I couldn't recite them to you in order unless you're giving them to me by name, and I could go through all 10 of them. Like someone had asked me on Twitter, or my cousin just said, well, why do you believe in Muslim and all this? And he wanted a big explanation from me. And I told him, I was like, because, I believe in the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I believe that his revelations were from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what I believe in my heart, and that's what I'm gonna follow. And even if I didn't want to, I couldn't disbelieve. I just try to remain steadfast in the salah, and of course everyone's mind goes up and down, but it's always there, and I just have to just always have dhikr of Allah, just always have, every day as always, astaghfirullah, alhamdulillah, and I just stay, and being in this condition that I'm in, it's not easy to stay satisfied and happy. I can't do anything for myself, and sometimes if I ask somebody to do something, it'll take them quite a long time, and I was never a very patient person, but after I became Muslim and I studied more and read, I realized I have sabr now, and I can wait, and I can calm myself down and just remember when they take it too long, I just astaghfirullah, 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 and eventually they come.
How's your family dealing with your Islam?
No, my mother, she supports me in my decision. At first, I can tell you this, people. I converted for a month, and I was talking to my mom, and I didn't say anything, and I said, well, what would you say if I told you I was thinking about converting to Islam? And she's like, well, I wouldn't like it. I'm like, well, what would you say if I told you I had already converted you? And the first thing she said was, so you want to go blow up people? And I was like, oh, no, you have the wrong idea. And then eventually over time, as I talked to her, and I even gave her Quran to read, and she read some, and she understands me now, and she supports me. And my father had a different reaction, and he, from his experience, he had thought that, he told me, well, son, only black people are Muslims. And I was, and I was just,
That's me being a terrorist.
and I was just like, Dad, there's over, 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. They're of all races and colors and everything. And then the next time I talked to him, especially after the video came out, and I got a lot more Muslim friends on Facebook and stuff, my dad finally said and talked to me, and he's like, it's okay, but you want to, if you want to find your way to God that way, then that's your decision. My sister, she doesn't approve of it very much. She likes to she keeps her distance. I try to talk to her about Islam, and I gave her Quran, but she won't read. And then I gave my son Quran and I talked him into, he reads some, but he tells me I don't believe in organized religion and all this stuff. He's 16 years old, and he's real. I don't know. And he's one of the kids now these days who they're about video games and friends and being bored. They're really good. And actually, I had talked to my brother a lot about Islam and everything, and he liked it and everything. And I got him to take Shahada actually. And actually, he's the one. If you look at my Facebook page, he's the one with the thobe on, the white thobe. He's the one. He kind of looks like me a little. He's a little more chunky though. And he's 4 years younger than I am.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, please.
Can you describe the Prophet ﷺ for us?
Like describe.
Can you describe how he was in the dream?
Well, like I say, it was in the distance, and what I could see was, well, he was. I would say he was about 5'11" ish, maybe that tall, because he was taller than the people he was speaking with. Because some of them were sitting down and some were standing up. I can't really. My descriptive powers. I'm not very articulate. My descriptive powers are very lacking, so I couldn't tell you exactly. But when he had turned to me to talk, like the shadows from the flame, the fire, because when there's firelight, it puts off shadows in every direction. So when he had turned to me to talk, I couldn't really see his face. I could see the white of his teeth, And when he talked to me, it was in a very calm voice. Like he didn't yell at me like, "This man is only a prophet. He's not a god." He just moved his hand towards the crucifix and said it in a very calm voice. It's just like, in a convincing voice also. And it was just like, and I mean, right when he turned around, I knew exactly who it was, because I know people, everybody dreams, and when you dream, you know that a person's there. They don't have to announce themselves, but you just know exactly who they are. And that's when he turned, and I was like, whoa, and yeah.
Only very special people get to see the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You know that, right? And Shaitan cannot take the appearance of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Anybody else than the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
That's cool.
So someone that showed something special. It's for you.
I took it to heart, and like I said, I woke up, took Shahada, and then I started to learn, and I've been trying to keep my mind straight, stay steadfast, and be on the straight path, and being in a place like this, and being in the condition I'm in, trust me, it's very difficult, but I do it. I stay happy. I'm not depressed. I get angry like any human would, but I don't get depressed. I'm happy. I mean, anyone who meets me could tell me, you're a happy person. And I'll be honest, before I converted, I was a mean person. I mean, I was content, but I wasn't necessarily happy. I was angry towards other people. I treated people bad and everything. But then afterwards, my treatment of people, I watch what I say. I watch my tongue, and I think about what I'm going to say to somebody before I say it. And I remember, because I want to speak. Yeah, because I want to speak to people softly and with good words. Sometimes they're not as good as I'd like them to be.
Thank you so very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم سلم نبيا ورسولا